The ruins of a 2,500-year-old lost ancient civilization were recently found in a lake in Kyrgyzstan. Some researchers believe that these ancient remains may include an ancient Armenian monastery where, according to legend, the body of St. Matthew, one of Jesus' disciples, and his many relics were buried. A number of Orthodox Christians have long believed that Matthew was finally laid to rest here long after his death. Since the 19th century, Russian scientists, archaeologists and researchers from the Kyrgyz Academy of Sciences have studied ancient relics around Issyk-Kul Hot Lake, one of the world's highest and deepest lakes, located in a valley in the high Central Asian mountains in the Republic of Kyrgyzstan. Issyk-Kul Lake is 113 miles long, up to 37 miles wide, and has an area of 2,408 square miles. It reaches 2,192 feet in depth. The lake was first mentioned by Chinese and Islamic mapmakers at the beginning of the 8th century. Archaeological finds from the site have included petroglyphs and 3,000-year-old nomadic burial mounds known as kurgans, early Christian monasteries and medieval cities. The lake has long held a fascination for researchers as divers have been exploring its depths since as long ago as the 1860s. There was a significant rise in the water level of the lake at the end of the 14th century and the beginning of the 15th. As a result of this, the remains of various ancient cultures were submerged, including Bronze Age settlements, Saki Usuni burial mounds of the 1st century BC, medieval towns and settlements, and Turkic monuments. Since 1985, Professor Vladimir Flosky, Vice President of the Kyrgyz Academy of Sciences, has been directing underwater surveys and excavations at Issyk-Kul, and in 2010 he joined forces with National Geographic to explore the extraordinary history of the lake. In September 2013, scientists and archaeologists from National Geographic began investigations at the lake. The team chose this site due to its position at an important location along the legendary Silk Road, with routes running along its shores. In the past, innumerable traders, caravans and nomadic tribes and armies traveled along the 113-mile-long lake, leaving an extraordinary archaeological legacy behind. The Silk Road was an ancient trade route linking China with the West, along which goods and ideas were carried between the two great civilizations of Rome and China, and later between medieval European kingdoms and China. In the Middle Ages, the area surrounding the lake was fought over by two opposing lines of descendants from Genghis Khan, the Eastern Mongols and the city-dwelling Islamic Western Mongols. The legendary Western Mongol leader, Tamerlane, was said to have fought a battle over the lake region in the early 1400s, and there are medieval records of a palace built by the conqueror on the lake shore, Issyk-Kul. Some researchers believe it's the same structure as the 15th century palace near the town of Cholpon Ata, described by the medieval Arab historian Ibn Arab Sheikh. In December 2007, it was announced that Russian researchers had discovered important ancient remains of previously unknown culture beneath the lake. According to reports, Russian archaeologists discovered traces of a large city with an area of several square kilometers. In other words, it was a metropolis in its time. We also found Scythian burial mounds, eroded by waves over the centuries, and numerous well-preserved artifacts. Bronze battle axes, arrowheads, self-sharpening daggers, objects discarded by smiths, casting molds, and a faceted gold bar, which was a monetary unit of the time. In August of 2014, Russian news outlets published a story that divers from Tomsk State University had located another previously unknown ancient settlement beneath the lake, along with 200 artifacts. Perhaps the most fascinating find was a piece of large ceramic pot which had a stamp on it written in Armenian and Syrian scripts. This find may have been supporting evidence for the story that an Armenian monastery existed on this site in medieval times. According to Dmitry Gorn, who led the diving team, the inscribed pot fragment was truly unique. He added, "Experts are now working on the identification of the writings of the stamps, but it's supposed to be Armenian Syrian script. If this proves to be correct, it will be further evidence that there was an Armenian monastery on Issyk-Kul in the 14th century, where, according to the legends, relics of Matthew were stored. There is indeed a tradition that a monastery on this remote lake was the last resting place of evangelist St. Matthew, one of the 12 apostles of Jesus. Intriguingly, when the Russian traveller P.P. Semenov was in Venice in the 1850s, he came upon a copy of the Catalan Atlas from 1375. In this work he found a drawing of a lakeside monastery with the caption, "The spot is named Isikol. Here is a monastery of Armenian brethren, which is rumoured to possess the relics of St. Matthew the Apostle and Evangelist." The extraordinary Catalan Atlas is a perpetual calendar and thematic representation of the known world produced by the Majorcan Cartographic School. The creation of the atlas has been attributed to Abraham Kresk, a Jewish cartographer from Palma, Majorca. Semenov believed that the monks probably chose a site on the Kermenti Bay, as the site was protected from rough water and rich with fish. After visiting Issyk Kul in 1856-57, Semenov wrote, "Kermenti Bay meets these conditions, but I unfortunately did not find on the shore, nor in the drifts of the neighbouring shore, any object supporting my supposition." 50 years later, a Russian Orthodox monastery was built in the area. However, many Christians believe that Matthew the Apostle's remains were discovered in Salerno, Italy, in 1080, and are now in Salerno Cathedral, which is dedicated to the saint. Apparently, St. Matthew's relics had been brought to the town in 954 AD. St. Matthew, also called St. Matthew the Evangelist and St. Matthew the Apostle, was one of the 12 apostles of Jesus Christ and the traditional author of the first synoptic gospel, the Gospel according to Matthew. According to the calling of Matthew in the biblical book of Matthew, he had been a tax collector before being called to follow Jesus. As Jesus went on from there, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at a tax collector's booth. "Follow me," he told him, and Matthew got up and followed him. While Jesus was having dinner at Matthew's house, many tax collectors and sinners came and ate with him and his disciples. When the Pharisees saw this, they asked his disciples, "Why does your teacher eat with tax collectors and sinners?" On hearing this, Jesus said, "It is not the healthy who need a doctor, but the sick. But go and learn what this means. I desire mercy, not sacrifice, for I have not come to call the righteous, but sinners." According to tradition, Matthew's missions later brought him to the east, perhaps Ethiopia and Persia. Stories differ as to whether he died a natural death or that of a martyr. According to another tradition, he died as a martyr in Syria, and his relics were kept there for 150 years. Apparently, his followers later fled from persecution to the depths of Asia, bringing the relics of the apostle with them. Yet another tradition holds that St. Matthew died while traveling to India and established several Christian communities on his way, one of which was Issyk Kul. It's known that a thriving Christian Armenian community existed in Kyrgyzstan since the 1st century AD. Many artifacts were found in Chu Valley, a large valley located in North Tian Shan, including an engraved stone with a cross carrying an Armenian inscription, "Jesus our Lord." A Syrian inscription under the cross stated, "This is the grave of Johann, the Armenian bishop," and a date 772 in Armenian chronology corresponding to 1323 AD. In medieval times, 2 Armenian monasteries stood near one of the villages on the shore of the lake, Svetli Mis, Bright Cape. More evidence that the remains of St. Matthew may have ended up in an Armenian monastery on the lake comes from the late 19th century, when Baron Kolbaz, Russian general and explorer of Central Asia, traveled to the site. He wrote, "It is worth noting that not far from the Trinity Monastery, at the confluence of rivers Tayup and Koisu, ruins of an ancient town are found underwater. The town hosted the Armenian monastery guarding the relics of St. Matthew." Archaeological investigation of the Kermenti settlements began in 2005, when an exploratory team visited the site of the monastery and settlement. Finds from the area include bronze crosses, a signet ring with ornamentation, coloured beads, and more than 24 crucifix necklaces. Only ongoing continuous archaeological expeditions and detailed historical research can solve the mysteries of Issyk Kul. Nevertheless, some people are convinced that this site is indeed the location of the lost Armenian monastery, and possibly the remains of St. Matthew. According to Hindu legend, there was once a mystical kingdom located in the middle of the sea. The city was home to 900 palaces, all made of gold, and was supposed to have arisen out of the waters on the command of Lord Krishna. Recently, underwater archaeologists claim to have located what some believe to be the foundations of this fabulous lost city off the coast of modern Dwarka in western India. Char Dham, literally meaning the four abodes or seats, are the names of four pilgrimage sites in India that are widely revered by Hindus. It comprises of Badrinath, Dwarka, Puri, and Rameswaram. Dwarka is often identified with the Dwarka kingdom, the ancient kingdom of Krishna, and is believed to have been the first capital of Gujarat. According to legend, Krishna founded the city in Gujarat's west coast after he defeated and killed his uncle Kansa at Mathura. In Indian epic literature, the ancient city is also known as Dwarka. Traditionally, modern Dwarka is identified with Dwarka. Ancient Dwarka is supposed to have sank into the sea in remote history. The ancient and modern city, now known as Dwarka, is located on the western tip of the Saurashtra Peninsula in Gujarat, northwestern India. In the 14th century, the town's original temples were destroyed by the Delhi emperors, but the most important of them, Jagat Mandir, was subsequently rebuilt. Jagat Mandir, also known as the Dwarkadish Temple, is a Hindu temple dedicated to god Krishna, who is worshipped here with the name of Dwarkadish, or the King of Dwarka. The five-story sandstone edifice is supported by 72 pillars and was constructed in the 15th to 16th centuries in the Chalukya style. It covers an area of 69 by 88.5 feet, with its spire a dizzying 257 feet high. The temple is visited by thousands of pilgrims every year. Ancient Dvakra is mentioned in a number of Indian texts, including the Mahabharata, the Shrimad, and the Bhagavad Gita. The Mahabharata describes Dvarka as having 900,000 royal palaces, all constructed of crystal and silver and decorated with emeralds. The ancient city was connected by an elaborate system of boulevards, roads, marketplaces, assembly houses, and temples. Archaeological investigations in the city of Dwarka and offshore in the Arabian Sea have been undertaken by the Archaeological Survey of India since the 1960s. Over the past decade or so, underwater excavations have uncovered interesting remains at a depth of 120 feet in the Gulf of Cambay off the western coast of India. Some reports claim these discoveries could be over 9,000 years old and cover an area 5 miles long and 2 miles wide. Marine archaeologists have used a technique known as sub-bottom profiling to reveal that the building's remains stand on enormous foundations. One news report in the New Indian Express from August 2018 stated sensationally, marine scientists say archaeological remains discovered 36 meters, 120 feet underwater in the Gulf of Cambay off the western coast of India could be over 9,000 years old. It's believed to predate the oldest known remains in the subcontinent by more than 5,000 years. Carbon dating on debris recovered from the site, including construction material, pottery, sections of walls, beads, sculpture, and human bones and teeth, put it at nearly 9,500 years old, making it older than the Sumerian civilization by several thousand years. It's also older than the Egyptian and Chinese civilizations. The city is believed to be even older than the ancient Harappan civilization. Sandstone walls and a grid of streets and other evidence of a seaport 70 feet underwater, alongside artifacts dating back to 7,500 BC, have convinced some researchers that finally the legendary city of 900,000 royal palaces has been located. The archaeological explorations off the coast of Dwarka have also brought to light a large number of stone structures. These are semicircular, rectangular, and square stone edifices scattered randomly over a vast area. Besides these structures, many varieties of stone anchors have been uncovered alongside the structures as well. Such findings suggest that the ancient Devaka was once a busy port, though these structures are thought to date to comparatively late in the site's history, probably belonging to the late medieval period. Indeed, various Indian historians have stated that the stone anchors match those used in the Indo-Arab trade from the 8th to 14th century AD. However, this recent date has not stopped some from claiming that the remains represent the legendary lost city of Devaka and so must be 9,000 years old. The lead archaeologist of a number of excavations at the site, the late Dr. S.R. Rao, described the town plan of early Devaka based on his team's discoveries. There were 2 fortification walls, one on the lower terrace and other in the middle terrace. These walls, which extend over a length of 4 kilometers on the eastern shore, are mostly destroyed by sea action. The walls of the lower terrace are of massive dressed sandstone blocks, while that of the upper terrace are of rubble. The houses and other public buildings, built of smaller size stones within the enclosures, are all destroyed and leveled up by the encroachment of the sea. These structures lie at a depth of 7 to 10 meters below the present mean sea level, indicating a rise of 10 meters in sea level during the last 3,600 years. In the opinion of some researchers, the rise in sea level mentioned by Dr. Rao seems to indicate that ancient Devaka was destroyed by a great flood. Indeed, for some archaeological proof of the existence of the Devaka and its submergence, perhaps in the 2nd millennium BC, reflects the truth of the descriptions in the Mahabharata. For them, the finds would make the Mahabharata not merely a book of myths and legends, but to some extent a genuine account of past events. In September 2019, it seemed that final proof for the wonderful architectural achievements of ancient Devaka have been discovered underwater off modern Dwarka. A Twitter user going by the name @JIKS shared 4 sensational photos showing ornately decorated underwater sculptures and structures, with one resembling a temple tower. There was a claim accompanying the image which stated, "Sri Krishna's Dwarka, the sunken city in Gujarat, as described in the Mahabharata. It is real, yet the Christian world says there is no proof." The tweet was retweeted over 1,500 times. However, subsequent research into the 4 images revealed the falseness of the claim. One image, showing the sculpture of a lion with its left paw resting on a ball, was traced to an underwater memorial reef near Key Biscayne in Miami, Florida. It is the largest man-made reef in the world and contains 2 statues of lions to mark the entrance to the site. It is a photo of one of these lions which was used on Twitter as proof of new discoveries from ancient Devaka. The 3 other images were also traced to various other online sources, including various photoshopped composite images using various temple remains collected from all over the world. Consequently, it's obvious that the images used on Twitter have no connection whatsoever to ancient Devaka. Indeed, the whole claim of a submerged civilization off the coast of Dwarka, dating back 9,000 years, rests on extremely shaky grounds. In the media accounts of the discoveries, the claim of the city being 9,000 years old is based entirely on one radiocarbon date from a single piece of wood. But this piece of wood could very easily have belonged to a tree that existed prior to these underwater remains. No other object from the excavations has actually been dated. Experts have pointed out that the area in which remains have been found has huge tidal movements which would have moved artifacts and even structures around, perhaps many miles from their original locations. Furthermore, many of these stone objects found seem to be geofacts rather than artifacts, that is, natural objects made by water and sand erosion. The argument that there's a submerged 9,000-year-old Devaka in the area is based on the premise that a submerged coastal settlement could only have been built when sea levels were much lower, and therefore could only have been built before the end of the last ice age, around 10,000 years ago.